Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today, we are going to talk about a very important topic because it seems to be one of those things that catalyze a decision to buy a reel. And we're going to talk about max drag on reels today in this video. If you're new to the channel, this channel talks about the hows and whys of fishing. We cover everything from big game, ultralight, everything in the middle, including fly fishing. And today, we are talking about max drag power. I dare say that it is one of the biggest metrics that people use in their reel buying decision making. A lot of people say like, oh, I like this reel better because it's stronger. So when they say stronger, it means the drag pressure, okay, or the drag output. And that's something quite important because it kind of gives us a rough idea of exactly what the reel can do. Okay, now here's the thing: a lot of manufacturers will put the max drag power on, and what happens is that when you buy the reel, they don't really reach that. For some, it reaches. Okay, it reaches that level. Let's say, take for example, one reel would say that it is max 50 pounds, 25 kg, somewhere there. Put it together, bang, yes, 25 on the dot. Yet there are some that don't. You'll find that, it doesn't really reach that. Now, some manufacturers would say that there's a break-in period, that as the drag washers wear down as you use them, it will hit that number. Be that as it may, it is a metric that the reel may or may not reach. Just take note. Okay. Now, if you want to really make sure that your reel reaches that, the only way is really to test it out. Okay, but all I'm saying is that sometimes, for some brands, you won't be able to hit the max immediately. It could be that, the carbon needs to wear down a little bit so that you can tighten it a bit more. Okay? So just take note. Sometimes it doesn't reach at all. Okay? So, it's just, and that's a problem with the design. All right? And we have nothing to do with that. Now, the max drag of a reel is basically the amount of pressure that it can generate by friction. So in these reels, okay, when you move these, like these are lever drag reels. So if you move this, there's going to be kind of like a drawbar that tightens. Okay, so there's a part here that's called a cam. It's kind of like a ramp. It's a round thing that's ramped. Okay, so it goes sideways like that. So as you push this, it goes from the thin side towards the thick side. So imagine that it's a circle, and then you put it that way, it forms a ramp like that. Okay, twisting around. And what happens is it pulls a bar inside here, or the shaft, and it pushes this side plate here inside the spool. Okay, it pushes, and when it pushes like that against a the inside surface, there's a housing for this particular reel. At least there's a housing on this side that gets pressured into pushing onto what's called a drag plate, and the drag plate presses on the drag material, which is in this instance carbon. Some reels will have cork, so kind of depends, but the most widely used three types of drags that are used is felt for the cheaper reels, or for the ones that require very little drag pressure. like light tackle reels, they use felt, cork, and carbon. Okay, so those are the three most common types of drag washer material. So once the pressure is on, that's it. Now for star drag reels, basically you tighten it here, you tighten it here, and you loosen it up by doing that. For lever drags, push forward and back. Main difference with lever drags is that you have repeatability in each fishing trip. Before you go and after, it is recommended that you loosen the after the trip, you loosen the star drag. Okay, for obviously when you go out, you have to set your drags, so you tighten up the drags. This is done so that it doesn't compress and break your washers. For this, for lever drags, all you have to do is preset using a knob here, okay, and then set it while you're fishing, and then you could just back it off into free spool and you're good to go. Okay, now something that you have to really understand when it comes to drag is that when you're setting your drag, you're setting it on a full spool. Okay, while you're fishing, you have to drop down. So in the instance of, say, casting, you've already set your drag. So the distance between your reel and the fish, when the fish bites, changes the drag pressure. So the fish feel a different pull of the different force of drag, even if you have set it, let's say you've set the drag and you use poundage for it, because you're dealing with force. Okay, so you set a constant force on this by moving the lever forward, putting it on strike, or in the instance of star drags, you're tightening the star drag, and that creates the friction that creates the force. Okay, so that is set. So you set it at a fraction of the max drag power, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's a poundage or rated in kg. So take, for example, you're using 20, let's say 20 kg line. Okay, and you choose a fraction of that. A standard would be either 1/3 or 1/4 of that. Let's say for the sake of easier math, it's 1/4. So your drag force set when you're putting it on strike at full spool would be 5 kilos, because 20 divided by 4, 1/4 is 5. So you set it at 5 kilos. Okay, let's say that the maximum drag that your reel is able to produce is about 30. Okay, so your line is 20 kg, 20 kg line, and the maximum that your reel would be able to, the output, maximum output, let's say, is 30 kg. Okay, just for reference sake. Now, that's a lot. 30 kg is a lot, and I can tell you that. Okay, so 30 kg is about 66 pounds. That's substantial, considering that when a fish hits and then you put it up on max, you're trying to stop a constant 66 pounds. In most cases, if you're on a very strong fish and you're putting it on max drag, that's gonna rip the rod and reel off your hands. So yeah, that's sketchy. So let's say you put it at 5, okay, because that's basically what we discussed earlier. 20 kg line, you put it at 5 kg. Okay, now here's how physics works. Okay, And this is something that you really should understand. As the spool diameter decreases, the drag force should increase because the torque exerted by the drag system remains constant. It's a constant force, remember, 5 kg, it doesn't change, okay? And the force is inversely proportional to the radius. Now, to put it simply, okay, just so it's easier to understand, there's two things that happen. The stack of line that you have diminishes. And when it diminishes, the force that it generates increases. Okay, so the more the stack of line decreases, the more it will become stronger. Which means at 5 kilos on strike, when it's full, it will progressively become stronger. That's one. Two, it will progressively become slower because the amount of line that make up the stack when you're turning it, okay, becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, so if we have this and we put line on that, let's say like that, you pull it out, it's long. Okay, now you measure from a smaller circle like that, and then you'll see that the length is actually shorter. So as your line decreases, your reel becomes stronger and it becomes slower. Now, here's what a lot of people don't realize. When you're reeling in and when you're gaining line, it flips, okay? Your reel will slowly get weaker and it will work itself towards the 5 kg that you initially set. And it will also get faster because the stack gets bigger. There's another thing that's very simplistic on its own, but there's another thing that actually happens. You see, this is a narrow reel. This is a wider reel. So you can see there, they have the same diameter, but one is narrow, one is wide. Now, with the wider reel, what do you think happens? This increase of drag happens gradually because not only does the line go up and down, for this, it has a lot of sideways movement. So your drag spike, and that's what it's called, your drag spike is slower on wider reels. Okay, so that's something that you should actually keep in mind. Now, if you go to, let's say, this reel, okay, let's say this is our reel, and you set it at 5 kg, okay, there is a point in time where the breaking strain of the line would be equal to the force that's generated by the reel. All because as the line diminishes, the force increases, okay? It's just, a smaller spool radius. Remember this, the smaller spool radius means the same torque results in higher force. Okay? So again, as mentioned, the smaller the diameter of your line stack, the more force it will generate. The force that you initially put on, it's constant. It's constant. Again, like same torque. It will generate higher force. What do you think will happen? If you have 20, okay, if you have 20 kg, let's say 20 kg line, let's say at half. At half, the spike is a kind of a huge percentage. So from 5 kg, it would probably be around 10, let's say, at more than half, 10 or more, probably. There's actually an equation that you could use. You plug in the new diameter, the force, and then you multiply it with the it's I know that because I wrote an article about it a long time ago, but without going into that, you basically take the old diameter, new diameter, and then you can compute. And remember, you have a constant force there, which is like in our computation, that's like 5. So you apply the force on a newer, smaller diameter, and you'll see that it's a huge increase. So even now, if we take the new diameter, let's say we strip off the line and then we took a scale, and you'll see that it's actually quite accurate. So at 5 kg, let's say it doubles near the double the halfway mark before you hit the arbor, okay, or the bare arbor where the line is tied. Before you even hit that, the force is more than 20 kg, and your line will break. That's the reality of it. So before you even get spooled, your line will already break. At this point in time, okay, if you're using a thin leader, that would have popped a long time ago. Or if your hook isn't strong enough, it will probably bend. Now remember, we are only measuring the forces that we can measure. Okay? We cannot measure how much pressure is exerted by the fish and the line going through the water. We can't measure that, but that's higher, which means that, I mean, you can see this in videos on YouTube. You can actually watch it. You'll see that even if they still have a lot of line on their reels, it pops, especially if they tighten it. And a lot of people kind of tighten the drag as the fish runs. And what happens is that they're increasing the pressure even more, and the line will pop. So we go back to the question then. Should it be a metric that you look at when you're buying reels? And then should it be that take for example, you're looking at bait casting reels, and then you see an OSHA a Calcutta Conquest 200, and then it has a 7 kg of drag, and then you think it's weak. That's fine. At the end of the day, what happens is that manufacturers will always put sort of a safety, and I think in the case of Shimano, they know this very well. 7 kg when you start is very, very much normal, because guess what? The line that you put on, let's say, a Calcutta Conquest is actually kind of thin. When it comes to jigging reels, it's the same thing. Okay, so like take for example, for this particular reel, this is an L80 by Studio Ocean Mark, and it has a max drag power of 14 kg. The line that you can put on here, the recommended is maximum of PE8 on the 100. Okay, that's about 100-pound line. And then for this one, you could put PE5, and it holds 550 meters. So if you think about it, 14 kg max is plenty, considering that if you max it out at full spool, it progressively becomes stronger as the line goes out. For me, max drag isn't as important. For me, I look at how the reel is engineered and how ergonomic it is to use, and other features. Yeah, you consider the max drag power because at the end of the day, you don't want a weak reel. But there's ways around that. If you understand how things work, you would be able to look at aftermarket parts that perhaps increase the surface area of the drag surface. It could be a change on the drag plate. It could be the material itself. Like take for example, putting a carbon fiber disc that instead of a strip, you can put like a solid one. So in the case of Shimano, they actually use kind of strip washers, kind of thin. Now, if you increase that by a little bit, uh, it also increases the drag pressure. But remember that those work within a tolerance for the materials that's being used. So on bigger, more robust reels, you can play around more than with the smaller ones because if you play around with the drag of the smaller ones, chances of your line breaking actually gets higher. I know because I did that. Okay, so uh, not really something. Now, the advantage of reels that have higher max drag output rather, is pretty straightforward, and a lot of people wouldn't even reach that level. Now, for me, especially, even if I'm using this, I'm not gonna put the 14 kg that it's rated for, because at the end of the day, I'm gonna have to hold this and pull it back. So, I always go for, let's say for this one, I have PE4 on this or PE3. No, PE4 on this, and then I have, I think PE4 on this one as well. Considerably or comfortably in the middle of the range for these reels. And I go for capacity because that's basically what I need. I would rather have more line than more power. And the drag that I use on these would be lower than the max because I'm the idiot that's gonna hold the rod. Okay? I'm the idiot that's gonna hold the rod and I'm gonna be standing there holding it as the fish actually goes and tries to pull line. And it will. Okay? The object of fishing is not to remove the dentures out of fish. Because see, the thing is, if you just want to stop the fish, you shouldn't be using mono, you shouldn't be using braid, you should be using steel cable, and your reel shouldn't have drag. But it's there. It's there for a reason. So drags are there to tire the fish out, not to pull the dentures off or remove their spine. Remember. Okay? So use it. That's it. Now a lot of people are thinking that okay, do that with the tuna, and okay, I appreciate that. But see, the thing is, we fish for sport. And if your reason is something else, then that's you. But, it's called sport fishing, not fishing for a living. Yes, there are bigger reels that suit other purposes. And great, if you want to use that, then go ahead. But again, drags are there for a reason. Okay? And for me, max drags, they're just an indication of how much surface area was given to the washers, not the strength really of the reel, because like it or not, you can increase the max drag or you can decrease it. Performance doesn't mean power for the most part. F1 cars from V12s, they're running V6s and they're running faster. There's there's merit to that. Okay, there's merit to that. Anyway, so I hope this gives you a better understanding. Really, again, a lot of people use it as a metric, which I think they shouldn't. There's a lot more things to worry about when it comes to the reel. Ergonomics, ease of use, basically how it's built. You don't want it to break. The reel is kind of useless if it has like a really strong or really high max drag, and then it falls apart when you use it. There are different requirements for reels that, for me, for reels that I hold, types of fishing that I hold, I want them to be lighter. For types of fishing that require me to put them on a rod holder, heavier reels are fine. So trolling, bottom fishing, some instances for bottom fishing, let's say live baiting, even drifting and stuff like that. Surf fishing, which I love, I can actually get away with heavier equipment because at the end of the day, I'm gonna put it on a rod holder, especially now that have a hard condition. So especially now, so the lighter the gear I have when I'm jigging, and all other types of fishing, even ultralight casting, all types of fishing that I'm holding that require me to hold the rod and reel, I want it to be lighter. And guess what? Sometimes lighter reels, they don't have a lot of max drag. But if you're a big burly guy, and you're into this whole thing with heavy reels with what do you call this? Really high drag ratings and all that, great. It's your thing. But hopefully, this video gives people an insight on how to choose reels, especially with the whole debate about max drag. Alrighty? So that's it. If you learned something, give it a thumbs up. Give this video a thumbs up. And then, so that a lot of people would know about this, I really encourage you guys to click on that share button. And if you're new to the channel and want to learn more, click on subscribe so that each and every single time I publish a video, you'll know. Okay, so subscribe, click on that notification bell. Alrighty. And lastly, it's not a requirement, but if you want to help this channel progress, this costs. Trust me, it costs money. So a little help from you guys, just to keep things a bit manageable on my side, click on that membership button. And it is highly appreciated. Alrighty, that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. Could be boring for some people, huh? I'll see you in the next one. Class is missed.